Hey guys, today we have a shootout, and this is going to be between the Hasselblad X1D 50C and the Fuji GFX 50s. Wow, that almost got away from me because there's so many letters and numbers there. Anyway, both medium format mirrorless cameras, both sharing the same CMOS 50 megapixel sensor. And that's kind of where things end. They have very different user experiences. For one, the ergonomics between the two cameras is radically different. The design of the Hasselblad X1D is absolutely gorgeous. The build materials, the way that the hand grip feels in your hand, the balance of the whole thing, how thin it is absolutely beautiful. It is the quality that you would come to expect from Hasselblad. And as a camera that you would carry around for kind of casual shooting or street shooting, or even just like putting in your bag and not being overwhelmed with a lot of weight and bulk, the X1D is fantastic. Conversely, the GFX 50s is just a bulky thing. Now, it's functional, but it's got some odd bulk to it, and that really kind of, bummed me out because Fuji is so wonderful with the design. I mean, I've had every issue, every of the X100 series from the first to the fourth. I've had the X Pro 1, the X Pro 2, which are absolutely beautifully designed cameras, and the GFX is just kind of like a clunky camera. It just does not have any of that curb appeal that the Hasselblad does. However, let's overlook that. The GFX has a lot more features on it. It's got the tilting articulating screen, it's got the electronic viewfinder that you can add a tilting adapter to, and it's got the button layout that completely blows the Hasselblad away, in that if you're a Fuji user, all the buttons and dials are exactly the same as is the menu. So it's very intuitive to use if you're coming from the Fuji platform. If you've been shooting with an X100, or an X Pro 2, or an XT2, or other iterations of those cameras, you'll be very much at home with the GFX because it has all of the same menu items that you are accustomed to, so you can literally seamlessly just start shooting and be done with it. Whereas the Hasselblad is a lot more of a learning curve. Now, there's not necessarily a lot more to learn necessarily, but just getting acquainted and accustomed to the handling of that camera, it takes a little bit more getting used to. I did like the simplicity of the Hasselblad, and I like that it's not all cluttered up with a bunch of stuff, but the one thing that I mentioned in the review, and I'm going to mention it again, is that missing joystick for changing focus points. That to me just drives me crazy. There's no dedicated anything for you to change the focus point, and that just kind of is a huge pitfall as far as the X1D is concerned. So let me see, what else can I talk to you guys about? Okay, I tethered with both of these cameras, and the Hasselblad tethers to Focus, P-H-O-C-U-S, Hocus Pocus, Focus. And Focus is it's a weird program. I mean, it's free, it's a free download. It's come a long way. I mean, when I had my original Hasselblad X, what was it, the H3D 31, whatever, back in the day, Focus was unusable. So Focus has come a long way, and I like that it tethers with USB-C, which is really neat because you've got a very thin cable, you've got a very thin connector, and it's very, very fast. That's very cool. The GFX tethers only to Fuji software, which I didn't even bother with because I'm like, why? And I used the plugin for Lightroom, and that was awesome. It tethered pretty well. Both cameras have, considerable buffering issues, which, I guess is something that's not uncommon to medium format when you're writing these huge files. Hey guys, this video is brought to you by Squarespace. And as you know, I use Squarespace for my own website. In fact, anytime someone asks me for a recommendation, I always recommend Squarespace. Right now, if you use the code ADAM, you will save 10% on your Squarespace website at checkout. Not having the ability to tether directly to Capture One, to me, kind of really drops it down on the professional spectrum quite a bit because it really is the industry standard, and Focus is not. Lightroom, I guess most professionals are using Lightroom, but for tethered shooting, particularly in a professional environment, Capture One is always my preferred go-to, and I wish that there was support. But Hasselblad and Phase, they do not play nicely together, and Phase also does not want to open up the tethering market to Fuji as well. So there you go with that. As far as focusing, okay, both cameras lack phase detection, autofocus. So they're doing contrast, what is it called again? It's contrast detection, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so if you're a DSLR shooter, as I am, and you've got a DSLR and you're accustomed to really, really fast phase detection software, I'm sorry, phase detection focus or dual pixel autofocus like on the Canons, that is something you are not going to have with either of these cameras. Both of these cameras do not focus in low light very well. They do not focus when, you know, like if you were, let's say, trying to shoot something like on a very flat kind of a color or something that didn't have any texture or anything like that, and it wasn't very bright. Both of the cameras are going to hunt for focus, and that can be really aggravating, especially, you know, when you really want to nail that focus on the eye and the camera's like, and the lens is just kind of going back and forth. That is a real deterrent. I know that when I was using the X1D, I was shooting a friend of mine, Kasha, and it really just took a long time to nail focus, and we actually had very good light. And when we did nail focus, it was freaking awesome. The files were absolutely gorgeous. And then I picked up my 1DX Mark II Canon, and it was just like, you know, it's like a machine gun. It just nails focus so fast, so accurately, so quickly. So from a usability standpoint, if you're accustomed to DSLR shooting, both of these cameras are going to be supremely aggravating from an autofocus point of view. And if you want to shoot moving stuff, continuous focus is really just a nightmare. I tried it, and it really is not something that I was able to really master, or did I want to really take the time to try to master on either camera as well. I just figured, you know what, if I'm going to be shooting moving stuff, I'm going to grab my Canon 1DX Mark II because that's the way to go, and it's going to get the job done. Okay, let's just talk about a few other things here. Okay, yeah. So you got leaf shutter versus focal plane shutter. Now, one of the things that I love about the Fuji X100 series is that leaf shutter, because that allows me to sync, to do flash sync up to the camera's, practically the camera's maximum shutter ability. So if the camera goes up to a 4,000th of a second, like it does with the X100F, I'm able to do flash sync close to a 4,000th of a second. And I say close because I know that there's some talks about how close it actually gets without, you know, some shutter lag, whatever. But I'm able to do some very, very, very fast flash sync, and I'm not limited by the shutter on that camera, which is really, really freaking awesome. And that's the same thing that's true with the Hasselblad. Because it's got a leaf shutter, you are able to do flash sync all the way up to 1/2000th of a second. So, you know, you don't have to worry about messing with high-speed sync or having a lighting system that does high-speed sync. You literally just put the flash, you know, the strobes on the camera, you know, or you put the strobes out, you put your transmitter on the camera, and boom, you can sync all the way up to the maximum shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. Conversely, the Hasselblad only has a shutter that goes to 1/2000th of a second, so if you're in bright light and you want to shoot wide open, then you're going to have to start using ND filters and blah, 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 blah. Now, let's talk about the GFX when it comes to shutter sync. They limited it to 1/125th of a second. Are you kidding me? As a portrait shooter and somebody who uses lighting for the majority of what I do, limiting the shutter sync to 1/125th of a second is a real pain in the butt, because I like to shoot wide open, I like to crush ambient light, and if I'm only going to be able to shoot 1/125th of a second and I want to shoot wide open and I want to crush that ambient light, I am not going to be able to increase my shutter speed to really get that ambient light crushed down. So what that means is I'm going to have to close down my aperture, I'm going to lose the kind of flavor, or I'm going to have to get ND filters, or I'm going to have to invest in a lighting system that allows me to do high-speed sync. Image quality-wise, you know, I thought that they both did a great job. I think the color out of both cameras are fantastic. I think that when you do nail focus, that the amount of detail is absolutely incredible. The way the light falls off, the skin tones, I think that they're both very much on par with each other. So which is the better choice? Well, if I had to choose right now, I would say in a lot of ways the Fuji wins, because ergonomically it is so much more intuitive to use. There's so much more control over it. Just being able to grab that little dial and set the focus point is fantastic. Having the articulating screen is really a really nice thing. And you know, Fuji does have a much greater lens lineup and a lot more, I think they put a lot more time into R&D as far as firmware updates. You know, I think that they're very progressive as far as the mirrorless camera market. You know, obviously they started a bunch of years ago and they've just continued to go from there. Hasselblad, on the other hand, I think that the image quality is fantastic. You know, I think the build quality is fantastic. I think the ergonomics of the camera are fantastic. And I think that if they basically refresh the camera and add like a jog dial or some kind of like a little jog stick or something to change focus points, that would really be a huge deal. As far as availability of lenses, there's only a bunch, you know, handful of lenses for the Hasselblad, and the price point's quite different. You know, the Fuji system is a lot easier to get into, a lot lower price point. Hasselblad is a lot higher of a price point to get into. So, that was it. Who is the clear winner? Who wins? Who wins between the Hasselblad and the Fuji GFX? Well, you know what, guys? I hate to say it, but spoiler alert, the 1DX Mark II wins. This baby is just amazing. It is so fast. It is so accurate. It just gets the job freaking done. The files out of the camera look amazing. The color is incredible. The files are lightweight. I like that my raw files out of the 1DX Mark II are only about 25, 27 megabytes. That's fine, okay? If I'm shooting with the Hasselblad or if I'm shooting with the GFX, the files coming out of that camera, the raw files, are like 120 megabytes a piece, okay? So you can only imagine if you're doing a pretty big shoot how the data is going to add up. I mean, you know, I took one of those GFX files and I exported it as a full res JPEG, and it came out to, I think, 50 megabytes as a full res JPEG. I mean, it's just the data situation is getting out of control, and the file handling is getting out of control. So from that point of view, that is also something that you must consider if you're going with either camera, that you're going to be writing some huge honkin' files. There you go, guys. So that is my comparison between the Fuji GFX 50s and the Hasselblad 1DX 50C. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and we'll see you soon.